Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Creator's Conscience. Man, I am on a roll with these new episodes. Three new ones in the past week. Why not add a fourth? Fuck third times being the charm, fourth time's the charm. Today, I have with me, for the first time on the show, not only an author of queer fiction, but an agent who's looking out for queer fiction, especially from what I've seen on the Twitter pages and every post that this guest makes. Please welcome to the show, Zabé Ellor. Please tell me I pronounced that right.
Yes, that was good. You got it.
Oh, thank fuck! I was so afraid there. Welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And just for a note, I write under ZR Eller.
ZR.
So that's what you'll find my books under.
Okay, that's probably going to be easier. Guys, stop typing into Amazon the name I said and do ZR Eller instead. But great to have you here, man. This is the first time I've ever had an agent on the show, and obviously being an author, that's quite exciting for me. So we'll get right into mostly your origins and where you started from. So what I want to start off with is how did you get into storytelling? What was your inspiration for it? Did you love stories a lot as a kid? Pretty much go nuts.
Yeah, I've always been a big reader. When I was a kid, I started off reading at a very young age, and I think for a lot of people in publishing, sometimes we're a little shy, sometimes kind of like late bloomers, or we're always those kids who, when you were in primary school, sitting over in the corner reading a book or something. So books were just such a big part of my life when I was a kid, and then as I grew up, they continued to be such a great passion for me. I studied English in college. And then when I graduated, I started looking for jobs in publishing.
And that brought you to JD Lit Agency, I believe?
Yes. After a while, I started out working in scientific publishing. And then after a while, I was listening to a podcast with the literary agent Zabé of Talcott Notch. And she mentioned that she had been drawn to agenting because it was a chance to work hands-on with authors. And so at the time, I was working hands-on with a lot of authors, and I thought, this is one of the most enjoyable parts of the work is working hands-on with the people. And so I decided to get into agenting, and I interned at a couple different agencies, and then eventually I was offered this position at JD Lit.
And you've gone on quite a few clients since then, haven't you?
Yes.
One of those, I believe, was I think one of the first guests on the show, our good friend AJ White.
AJ, love him. Absolutely love him.
Yeah, he actually he sent me his book that I think you picked up not so long ago, Overabundance of Soul. It's fucking insane. I
mean, you can't get me. And thankfully, it is actually my job to praise this book. It is audacious and exhilarating, and such an incredible metaphor for the trans experience. It's fast-paced, but it's also literary. It touches on themes like religion, rebirth, and breaking through social conditioning. It's incredibly timely. It's like Wilder Girls in a faster, punchier form. And I love this piece. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, AJ actually brought us in contact, so I felt like I had to give him a bit of a shout out. There you go, buddy. If you're listening to it, we're just ranting about your book right now. I can't wait to see what comes of that, because I told him this when I read it. I'd never been a fan of dystopia until I read that story. And it was such a cool little twist on it that, I'm probably going to be getting at, like, as soon as it drops in the UK. I don't know if it's going to have a UK release. I know there's a weird issue with US agents. They take ages to come to the UK.
Oh, we'll see. That's all up in the air right now. But we have ways of getting you a copy.
Fair enough. And We'll go more into the agenting thing. I believe I think I queried you a couple of months ago. I can't remember if anything came of it. To be honest, I queried a lot of agents, but I saw something that you posted that I think's very good for authors to know. Is that we know what it's like to be in these trenches, like sending our stories out, these things that we put our hearts into, and it does hurt when you get the rejections. But you posted something that was, I thought, pretty enlightening for it, because you pretty much just said what your taste was. Like, I believe it was something along the lines of, I'm not really into like cute adventures or things like that. It's more like darker, mature themes. Am I correct there?
I think it's hard to like pin down my tastes to any one thing, because like as soon as I think, oh, like I know exactly what my tastes are, something will come along that surprises me. But I think one thing it's important for querying authors to keep in mind is that there's no science. Publishing is not a science. It's a business and it's an art, and there's absolutely no science to it whatsoever. So I see projects come across my desk, and I'm like, oh, like I read the query and I'm like, oh, like that's fabulous, like that's perfect, that's just right for me. And then I'll go to the writing, and then I'll be like, ooh, like that's not quite it. Or I'll go, or sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, oh, this like query is maybe okay, but I go to the writing, and the writing is incredible, and that sucks me in. And so, it's in large part, querying it's a numbers game, and it's a lot about timing and skill. I had to pass. I was reading a great manuscript this week that I had to pass on because a very similar book had just sold, and I thought I really couldn't do the best I could for this book, because of this other competition that was out there in the market. And so, and it absolutely sucks to be there in the trenches, and I know that because I've queried, and I was a querying author before I was an agent, and my agent was like the last person I queried. I think when I was querying, I queried something like 60 people before I found my agent. And so it can be a really long slog. And one thing that makes it so difficult is that you don't, like, you can look at an individual agent and be like, oh, this agent represents science fiction and fantasy, and I write that, so obviously, so I think it'd be a really good fit. But then there are so many different subgenres like within it, and like and maybe you've got a steampunk, and this agent's just like, ooh, like I'm not good on steampunk, or for me it's urban fantasy is a really tough sell right now, just because like when I was a kid I just read so much urban fantasy, and I loved urban fantasy so much that now when I see an urban fantasy manuscript in my pile, unless it's very fresh, like I still look at it and be like, ooh, like I'm not always sure like what this can add to the conversation. So yeah, sometimes you'll see an agent and you think, oh, like on paper they're the perfect match, and on paper like they are the perfect match, and there's nothing wrong with querying someone who you think would be a good match, even if they pass, because there are so many different factors that can go into a pass. Like it's as long as you're getting like a good rate of requests, like sometimes you just need to let the pass go.
And I imagine, I mean, let's debunk some agent myths here. I imagine that's just as hard for you to pass on something as it is for an author to get a rejection. And I feel there's a set part of authors who don't get that. They think, they want an agent, but when they get that rejection, part of them is going to feel like, oh, it's like this person is keeping me from achieving my dream. And like, whilst I understand that kind of frustration, that's just not the case. And I know from speaking with an agent that I'm currently talking to now, it's there's a lot more that goes into it. There's the whole business side that maybe some authors might not have a grasp on it. There's the whole artistic side. Maybe you've written something that's similar. But I feel authors should not be taking it personally. And agents, like, you guys have a job to do. At the end of the day, it'll be harder for you guys to pass on something that you really like, maybe because all those rules that are in place.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I try to keep my business side very separate from my agenting side, like with this book, I was reading the other day. I was just like, I was just like, I love this so much. I love the themes, I love the characters, I love the voice, I love everything. And I'm like, but I don't think I can sell this book right now because of just like a bunch of unrelated business factors that I can't control. And I was like, I could offer on this and I could try. I could try to sell it, but I'm just like, that would not be a service to the author. And my job as an agent is, and if my job as an agent is to be honest with writers, and and even if I can't, because I get what, like 100 queries a week, like even if I can't represent the project, I try to be honest and just like, at least like here's my rejection letter, and I know it sucks getting them, but at least what my response is, and I have these conversations with clients, and I have these conversations with people within and without the industry, just to try to make it clear, like why people are passing and why something isn't working at the time. So yeah, it's agents are, you don't want an agent who is not 100% in on your book. And you don't want an editor who's not 100% in on your book. Because, I've seen what happens when agents pick up projects they're not passionate about, but that they think, oh, I could make a lot of money off this. You see what happens when editors like pick up projects and they're like, oh, my boss is making me do this project and I don't really care about it. And those projects don't do as well financially. And so I think ultimately if someone passes because they didn't really fall in love with the work or because it's just not quite what they're looking for, that sucks. But it sucks even more to have someone take on work when they're not willing to devote themselves to you, because then your career is going to suffer.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think I could put this into author terms. Like, say, I think every author's had this point. Imagine if they've looked at a trend and they think, oh, I could write something like that, but you kind of know in your heart you're not 100% into it. Like, if I tried to write a dystopia, I know I would not be good at that because like my heart would not be 100% in it. And I think it's kind of a similar thing for agents. Like, you don't want one just to say yes just so you can have all the success you've dreamed of. You want one to say yes because they believe in you and they're passionate about your work and they want to have you on for longer and everything like that. And with that, I can really sympathize with agents. Like, it's as hard for you guys as it is for us writing the damn things. And I really appreciate it when agents like yourself and some others, like I see Lawrence Spieler and all those people, being honest about how it works, because I'm sure you've seen the threads where it's like there'll be a DV pit thing going on, there'll be a very successful pitch, and then underneath it, it'll be obviously some really bitter author who's been like, oh, fuck this traditional publishing, they're all just a bunch of gatekeepers, and like that, that does not, that's not good for the conversation. That doesn't help anybody. That's just being narcissistic and, quite frankly, nihilistic, and it's not helping anybody.
Yeah, and I get that feeling. I get what it's like to be out there and to be in a position where you're really struggling to find an outlet for your work, and it can be incredibly frustrating, especially for marginalized authors. Because usually, like, the standard advice you hear in publishing is if you're not, getting responses to your material, if you're not getting the requests, if you're not getting the offers you want, then you need to go back and work on your craft. And, I think in, like, 95% of situations, that is the right answer. It's like, if you're not, like, quite reaching that next level, you need to reevaluate and look at your work and, like, see where you can improve things and see what you can strengthen. But then also, when you are a marginalized author and you reach like a certain level within publishing, you start to notice like the industry is, sometimes people are more interested in stories about your pain than your joy, or sometimes all people want from you are stories about your identity. And so there is like there's a lot of different levels of frustration you can have, especially when you're a serious author, when you've found your agent, or when you're starting to like reach that level of interest from agents. And it can be a very confusing place to be in, because you don't know if the problem is with your writing, if the problem is, with the market, if the problem is with your identity and the themes you write about. And yeah, so it can just be absolutely very frustrating to exist in the publishing industry sometimes. But then again, the only thing you really have control over in the industry is the writing you put forth into it.
Definitely, and I also feel there's something in addition to that, which me and you did talk about, I think, a week or so ago when it happened, is when someone writing their own identity and writing their truth doesn't match the expectation of what it is. Like, I think I have a feeling that because Love, Simon was so successful, I think there's a big majority of the audience who's thinking, yeah, every queer story has to be happy and fun, like a John Hughes movie. And to be, whilst those are great, like those can be your experiences, that's not the only experience, and we shouldn't be treating marginalized identities like they're in a box. They can be expressed in so many different ways. Like I've talked to people like Adiba Jagarda and Frida Armike, and their books are completely different from one another, but they do draw some from similar experiences. With AJ, I've never read a story with a trans character like that before, and I'm sure there's going to be people out there who think it's weird and all that, but that is 100% AJ's story. So,
And I'm gonna fight them. I'm gonna fight the people who think it's weird, because that is my job, to destroy anyone who badmouths.
yes, and it's also your job to get him to stop adding eyes to the creature designs. If I'm
Oh,
right,
that
yeah.
was my suggestion. I told him to add the eyes.
Oh god, I still remember the first time when he pitched that to me. He said it was like Venom meets Mad Max, and it was like that was such a weird comparison, but it really works.
Yeah, I think the comp titles we're going with are it's Wilder Girls Meets the Passage.
Well, I've never heard of those, so I'm gonna have to look them out.
Oh, check out Wilder Girls. That's out in the UK now.
I am due a trip to Waterstones. Fair enough. So I suppose now we can get on to what it's like mixing that thing of being an agent and an author. I suppose maybe you have a bit of an advantage because you know more of how the industry works. But I want to know about your work. May the Best Man Win, I believe, is the title. It's out next
Yes.
spring. I know nothing about this, so this is going to sound awkward. Imagine I'm the agent for a second.
Yeah, so May the Best Man Win is my debut. It's coming out with Roaring Brook Press, Macmillan Kids, spring 2021, and it's about a trans boy who challenges his ex-boyfriend for the position of homecoming king.
Sounds very funny.
I don't know if you have. I don't think you have homecoming in the UK.
No, we have. I'm pretty sure we have Prom King and Queen, but it's not called Homecoming King or Queen.
Yeah. In the US, we have a bit of a tradition where every fall there's a big homecoming game. There's a big football game, American football. That's the thing with the where the ball is kind of shaped funny and we throw it and we knock each other.
Oh, you mean rugby?
Yes, it's rugby. Well, no, it's like rugby, but we have like breaks every like 10 to 20 seconds.
People
like
in the
rugby.
UK call it rugby with more padding.
Yeah, so it's limpy rugby. But anyway, we play a game of that, and all the people who have graduated, from the school in the past 2 years, like come back to like watch the game. And where I went to high school, it was a really big deal. There was this massive party that we put on every year. So yeah, the two main characters, Jeremy, he's the head cheerleader. Senior, he's just transitioning, and he very much wants to be the homecoming king and show the school, what a man he is, and just, really, really make it clear to the school that this is his identity. He is not homecoming queen, he is homecoming king, and this is who he is. And then Lucas, his ex-boyfriend, is on the football team, And Lucas, his older brother has just passed away. His family is in a lot of turmoil. And so Lucas thinks, oh, I want to get into a really great college to, to show my family that, things are going to get better for us. And the best way I can do that is winning Homecoming King and having this great experience put on my college application. And so he and Jeremy start competing against each other. And as things heat up, things kind of heat up.
Chaos ensues.
Chaos and romance ensues.
That, I mean, I hate that I use this comparison, but that does sound kind of John Hughesy, but a bit more modernized.
It is. No, it's got a lot of John Hughesy vibes in it.
Yeah, it's surprising. A lot of coming of age stories that I read now in like modern YA and middle grade, they feel so John Hughesy, and I mean I'm a big John Hughes fan, so I love that. But I don't know. I guess the thing that people in my high school always said, like I would hope there would be a return to like John Hughes style movies, because we haven't really had that outside of maybe like a couple of releases every other year. But the thing that I always say on the show, and it's something that I've been preaching about for years, if you add a marginalized perspective to a familiar story, it will make it feel fresh. I don't understand the people who say there are no original stories anymore because they've watched all the potential like ones that have already existed. But I don't really go into stories now looking for like new big twists on plots. I mean, that can be a fun bonus. I'm looking for new perspectives because I feel those are just as important in freshening up a narrative as, say, like M. Night Shyamalaning a familiar story.
Exactly, and I think also, it's a lot easier to convey to cis readers kind of what a story is, because it's like, oh, we have this idea of what the head cheerleader looks like. She's a pretty blonde girl who is dating a football player, and dresses a certain way and behaves a certain way. And so if
she's
like,
Molly
okay,
Ringwald.
take that character, but now the character is a trans boy and he's transitioning. It's kind of very easy to set up an expectation in readers' minds and then undermine it and play with those expectations. Whereas if you're like, oh, we're on another planet with a whole different understanding of gender and society, and then here are all these characters, and here's how they relate to gender and society. I think sometimes like cis people can't always understand why that's so important if you just like bring it down to an elevator pitch.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I mean I'm non-binary, so I kind of put that kind of twist into what I do as well. But I feel the most, like I said, the most important thing is like when you get those new perspectives, because marginalized authors have been finding it so hard to get into the industry, like before maybe now, I feel they're putting so much of their heart into it, and I'm sure you're doing that too, and it's coming out with really engaging emotional stories. I mean, I don't know if you've read Dean Atta's the Black Flamingo yet.
I have not, and it sounds fabulous.
I met him at Waterstones the other day. That's it's about this black boy who grows up in drag, explores his sexuality. And it's all written like in verse, and I didn't know books in verse were a thing, to be honest. But it was a really engaging read, and for someone like me who knows nothing about drag, I mean, look at me, I dress like a fucking American Eagles model, and it was a great new experience. And I think, especially, I think readers now, they tend to, there is a section of them that look for stuff that reflects their own experience, but I'm sure there's another set of readers who, like me, I want to find stuff that challenges my own experiences. So not only am I being entertained by something, but I'm also learning about the author behind it. I'm learning about this new perspective, this new idea that I had no idea about, and with that, I think it can be a really rewarding experience.
Yeah, and it's tough because you're always, you have to, it's hard to like sometimes strike a balance between entertaining and educating.
Mm-hmm.
I know within my own book, one of the things I was really thinking about is, and honestly, like one of things like I've had a lot of conversations with my agent and editor about are different moments where trans characters are portrayed in a way that isn't flattering, or in a way that like where they don't have like a perfectly, fully developed, fully mature sense of themselves or their gender identity. And I have this one moment that gets dissected by a lot of people who have read it, where this character Knox, they're 15, non-binary, computer geek, and they have like a little joke in there where it's like, oh, like all the queer, like the characters are like talking about religion, and so Knox is like, oh, well, all the queers are just like gonna go off to hell, but that's cool because Satan's ace, and they're our buddy. And so, and I get like so much like pushback from cis people on this, which is like, oh, like you can't have like they're like, oh, it's so awful that you have this queer character saying that they're going to hell. Like, why are you saying that queer people are going to hell? It's like, no, it's a joke.
1 million
Like,
moms is coming for you right now.
I know, but it's very much like like very like leftist, very very liberal people who are like, oh, like, or like, are like, aren't you like playing into like this trope about like queer people going to hell? And I'm like, no, it's a marginalized person like making a joke
Yeah,
about about their situation, about their identity.
and I appreciate that because I'm sick of the idea that everyone thinks that we as marginalized folk can't take jokes and we don't make fun of ourselves like amongst peers and that.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that thing you said about the sort of liberal thing, like that reminds me a bit of Get Out, where I saw the trailer for that movie and I thought, oh, is this going to be something like, okay, he's going up against a bunch of rednecks? Fair enough, it might be fun. I want to see some rednecks get their throats slashed, but then it goes in a completely different direction, and it's the white liberal people who are the bad guys, the people who want to continuously let you know how not racist they are, and then that in and of itself comes off as racist and like othering
Yeah.
and things like that. So it seems to me like are you going for a sort of similar approach with the trans identity? At least in the
I mean,
comedic
I would
aspect,
love a
not horror.
trans Get Out. Like someone pitched that. Like if there are any like black trans writers out there working on like a trans Get Out, like please like send that to me. Not kind of like that degree of satire. I think I wanted to capture, how queer people talk amongst ourselves, and kind of like the different like influences and intersections of identity, and how that influences how we relate to each other. There's this one minor character who's a cis gay guy, a cis white gay guy, and he's very clueless about a lot of the issues that the trans characters and the non-white characters like are dealing with throughout this book. And so like, I think sometimes there can be pressure to be like, oh, like queer solidarity, and like everyone supports one another perfectly, and like everyone is like 100% like social justicey, like perfect within the queer community, but that's not true.
That isn't true at
And
all. I wish that
yeah,
stereotype would go away.
yeah, and so like that was also one thing that was really important for me to capture in the book, was the different levels of power within the community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I have that too in my own works. Like my current main character is an 11-year-old girl who's discovering her identity and everything, and she is like a sweet, kind of adorable middle grade girl, but she's also kind of a selfish little brat because I mean that's how most kids are at that age, and I didn't want to shy away
Yeah.
from that because if I make her just this like, oh, I'm so sweet, I'm so innocent, please don't hurt me. That's kind of pandering as well, and that's not offering an authentic portrayal, and that's not like how I was at 11. And
And it's not interesting.
yeah, it's boring. Like I would rather take that stereotype and twist that into a villain. Like I feel that would be a fun twist on it. You know what? I might do that for something else. You've got me on a train of thought, giving me a new idea here.
Yeah, go for it.
But yeah, going back to the agent thing for a bit. So when you mention these rejections, and I really want to hammer home on this, and I welcome your take. If you disagree with me, fair enough. But we're here to have a discussion anyway.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of authors would benefit if they didn't take rejections and resent them so much, and instead use them as like learning blocks. So when I first pitched Moonflower a couple of years ago, it was a completely different story. I got some advisory submit back from that agent who made some suggestions, and then at first it's kind of like culture shocky. You think, oh no, there's no way I can do that. I've built it all so much on this, but then you start kind of marinating on it, and it ends up becoming better. And then now instantly, like I'm doing edits right now, I'm looking back through this thing, and I'm like, yeah, that one line I could say better. That one line that could go, that could be replaced with something else. And this was originally like a 56K book, and now I've managed to get it down to 50K just from eliminating unnecessary babble, as I say it. So I feel like these rejections, people think of them too negatively, and that's weird for a rejection thing. But if you use it as a learning thing, like how I believe you can learn as much from watching a bad movie as you can from watching a good movie. You can learn what not to do. That's what I do on my show, Stories as Lessons. I feel there's stuff to be learned in both aspects. Is that something you'd agree on? Or?
Yeah, and I think probably the most important thing for a writer to do is not only to rely on agent feedback or editor feedback, but oftentimes like even when I do give feedback, like I just like have the time to give like one line, like maybe two, and like I kind of like live in fear that I'll say something like hasty and it'll be the wrong thing for like a manuscript, and then someone will like take it to heart and like make a bunch of changes that aren't good for the book off like one like I'm almost like at the point where like if I like read a manuscript and I'm like, oh, like maybe it could work if the pacing was like changed, but I'm not sure. I don't always give that feedback because I don't want the writer to like make a bunch of changes off something that I just pulled off the top of my head.
Yeah, because another
I
agent
think
might
it's
feel
most
differently than you, right?
exactly, and I think it's most important for writers to have a good group of critique partners around them, and to surround themselves with people who are working towards a common goal. I was when I started off querying my friend Briston Brooks. She got me involved with a fabulous critique group, and so together, we all critiqued each other's work. We all refined it. Think about when we started off, only one of us was agented. Now about half of us are. Two of us have, book deals, books coming out in 2021. So I think it's really important to surround yourselves with people who can give you the really detailed feedback you need, and then let those people, let those voices be your guide rather than just relying on small scraps of information you get from the editors.
Yeah, I feel that's perfect. You've complimented my own thoughts perfectly there. This is why I have people like you on this show, man. This is really good. Let's now we're moving into my favorite part of the show, and thankfully I didn't prepare you for this. This is the part where I want to get an idea of what an author's kind of like hopes and dreams are. So let's look into the future for a minute. Let's jump in the fucking DeLorean.
Yeah.
Your books come out. It's a bestseller. Steven Spielberg's adapting it into a movie next week. It's coming out in IMAX 3D, 4DX, if that's still a thing. And now you've got the chance to do any project you want, no strings attached, nothing holding you back. Whether it be like going into screenwriting, comics, video games, that kind of thing. Is there anything you've thought of that you think you would love to do
I
if you were
want to
successful?
write ridiculously self-indulgent queer fantasy novels.
Okay, so pretty similar to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I just, fantasy is the genre that it's my first love. It's what I love to read the most. It's what I love to work on the most. And so that's absolutely the dream, is to get to write fantasy.
Well, That's that's the shortest and both the just greatest answer I could have expected from you there. Well, that's more or less gonna wrap us up. Thank you so much for having the time to come on the show. It was really great getting into your insight. I'll be sure to look out for your book when it comes out. If it has a UK release here, you know what? If even if it doesn't, I might just do what I did with Mason Deaver's book and special order it because I'm making some decent money on Patreon now. Uh, so,
Great.
is there anything you want to talk about or plug before we wrap up here?
Yes, you can add my debut, May the Best Man Win, on Goodreads. And follow me on Twitter at ZREllor. That's ZRELLOR.
Something quite funny. Before we started this, I asked how you pronounce that name, and I love how you use Kal-El as an example. I'm a big
Yep.
Superman fan.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, it was. You were a great guest, and thank you so much for coming on. And guys, I currently don't have much new guests in the works right now for the show, but I just want to use this to make an announcement. If anybody remembers my old show, Movies and Me, where I got a guest to come on every week and talk about a movie that was personal to them that I did way back when, I'm bringing that show back for a season 2. I'm gonna be working on getting some great new guests, hopefully some of the new writers I've met, anything like that. If you'd want to come on for that, just let me know. If there's like a movie that's a personal favorite of yours, we talk about it for about half an hour or so or something like that. And check out my channel for new videos, new stories as lessons. I've had to put my James Bond one on halt because No Time to Die has currently been rescheduled to November. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for listening, and if you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.